None of us are exempt from suffering. We'll all have stuff that we'll need to deal with. In fact, Jesus said, in this world you will have trouble. But take heart, I have overcome the world. You're like, great, thanks, Jesus. In this world we will have trouble. Hip, hip, hooray. But take heart, I have overcome the world. I'm with you. I'm through you. I'm walking with you in this world. You see, we need to change our mindset slightly about what it is all about. There's a parable that Jesus taught us, and he said to think about an internal perspective, that we need to have an internal mindset. And he told this parable that there was a man who had a vineyard, and the foreman, the worker, the supervisor on that land, got some workers for that vineyard, and they were going to go and pick grapes and pick the harvest. And they went into the town square, and he needed a worker to go and pick the grapes. So he went into the town square. I'm going to get a nice volunteer right now. I'll get my first volunteer, Dylan, up here. Dylan, come up here. Give him a hand. He's going to help me pick the grapes. We have a second volunteer. We do need somebody else, actually, so thank you. We'll have our second volunteer who's also happy to pick the grapes, yes. Okay, he'll be back. Second, picking the grapes, okay. So the first volunteer came at the beginning of the morning. At midday, we got the second volunteer, worker, to actually come and pick the grapes. But then the foreman decided that they still needed more people to come and pick the grapes. They're picking really well here. So they went about 3 o'clock in the afternoon and decided to get a third worker. So can we have our third worker? Our third worker. Where are we? They're looking at each other. Who's number 3? Come on, Miracle, you're number 3. Miracle, you can do this. It's 3 o'clock in the afternoon. Come on, Miracle, I need you to work. Thank you, thank you. Beautiful actress here right now. She's working hard. What is it that you want to go into? Acting, that's it. And then it came to 5 o'clock in the afternoon. There was only 1 hour to go of the day. And he went into the town square and he found somebody who was lazing around and said, what have you been doing all day? Why aren't you working? Come on. There's plenty of work to get into my vineyard. Start picking the grapes. So he got to the end of the day and he said to the first guy, he said, we planned that I would pay you 1 denarius. Now 1 denarius was a day's work and a day's pay. So I said to you right at the beginning, I will pay you 1 denarius. So here you go. I'm kind of working out. Apparently the equivalent is about 5 pence in today's money, but I'll up it a bit, okay? So there you go, Dylan. So you worked all day, yeah? You worked from noon, okay? I'm going to give you your wage from me, and there you go. You worked from 3 o'clock. I'm going to give you your wages there from 3 o'clock. And you worked an hour, okay? I'm going to give you your wages as well. Now this guy at the beginning thought, what's going on? I worked really hard. I worked all day long, and I got the same amount of money as the person. Oh, he's happy. He's really happy. Really happy. Grumble Dylan decided, Dylan isn't a grumbler, but Grumble Dylan decided it's really not fair, is it? It's not fair. I know sometimes life looks like this, and it doesn't seem fair. You know, fair isn't in the Bible. It doesn't talk about fair. But what it does talk about, it talks about generous. And God is a generous God. And even if somebody gets saved on their deathbed, he will enter into an eternal glory. And they will get the same reward as the one who's there for many years. I have a second service to do. I'll be generous later. Jesus said, have an eternal mindset. Treat one another. Treat them in a way that we want everyone to have those true riches, whether they've worked a long haul or whether they've done a short haul. You see, we need to have a generous mindset and be like God. Remember the prodigal son? He didn't deserve what he got from the father. Really, he should have repaid the father. He'd gone off and spent all the money. He should have repaid it back. But the father was so generous, he received him He welcomed them in. Oh, that we may have a generous mindset, that we may be generous to one another, that we don't look around for blame or fault or reason, or we don't look for people to earn their favor from God or the love of God over their lives, because we don't deserve pain. Ultimately, Jesus was our example in this. He didn't deserve pain. He didn't deserve the suffering on the cross. And he grappled with it. He was a human man. He grappled with it. You can see in the Garden of Gethsemane, he was there. And he was saying, if this cup can be taken from me, let it be. But not my will, but your will be done. If this cup could be taken away. He grappled with what he had to go through on that cross for you and for me. He was generous in the midst of that pain. When I had my third born, she's called Megan, she lives in London, if you don't know. I had a really difficult birth. She nearly died, I nearly died. I told somebody the story and they said they probably had about 10 minutes left, both of us. We really had to have an emergency cesarean. She was flat when she was born. She had tubes coming out of every area. And they thought, maybe she'll survive. Everybody prayed for her. The first 24 hours was really crucial. And they started to say, she's picking up. She's picking up. We don't know if she'll walk. We don't know if she'll talk. We don't know. We'll watch. It was the most painful thing to go through, to see your little one going through that. And afterwards I thought to myself, God, how come I went through all that? How come? I thought I was a good girl. I thought I was doing everything right. I was prepared to move from the northwest all the way to Cambridge for you, to this place that's flat and boring, and people just drink red wine, and it's just like, just not my kind of people. I was doing good. And God gave me a revelation that just because it's painful doesn't mean to say that love isn't in operation. Jesus hung on that cross, and he did it because of love. He did it because he loved us. Love was still in operation in the midst of that pain, even more so. When we go through difficult times, look out for the love of God. He's still working for all things together for our good. He will still work it through. He will still weave it in. He will still make it part of the picture of us, of our testimony, of the faithfulness of God. I prayed that prayer, but he didn't take it away from me. He didn't take that pain away from me another time when in 2004 we had many people here at C3, many of you will know the story, that there were people who decided to leave the church and to start another church. And they were people who were my friends. Many of them were my friends. They were the kind of friends who the kids got to play with each other. And we did sleepovers together. And we gave birthday cards and birthday presents to one another. They were that kind of friends. They weren't just kind of the friend you bump into and you kind of see every now and again. They were close friends. And in 2004, a whole group of them decided to move away. Oh, man, that hurt. That was so painful. And then a few others in 2006, a few more went, different group. And then 2008. It was a painful period. It was a difficult, difficult time. But I believe there was purpose in that. There was purpose in it. And sometimes the hardest things that we go through can make us into the stronger person that we are. God can use purpose in our pain. I believe that God hadn't called me to be a woman with a group of close-knit friends that just kept in a bit of a holy huddle. Little did I know that God had you in his mind. Little did he know that God was going to ask me to be involved in a global leadership conference. Little did I know that God was going to break my heart for people across this city and further. if I'd stayed in that holy huddle, maybe would never have really fulfilled the calling on my life that God has given me. There's purpose in what God is taking you through, what God is walking us through. Sometimes it's not easy, but you know what it is? It's the grace of God that gets us through. It's the grace of God that gives us what we don't deserve. You see, ultimately, we live in sin. Ultimately, there's a gap between us and our relationship with God. Ultimately, our sin separates us. But because of what Jesus has done on the cross for us, God really doesn't give us what he deserves. He gives us way and above what we deserve. He gives us grace. He gives us Jesus. He gives us a new life. He gives us a hope. He gives us a future. He gives us his grace. See, grace brings pardon to us. It allows us, even if things are wrong in our world, that deep down we know that Jesus says, it's okay. I've got you. It's okay. I've covered you. I'm not going to put that sin on you. Even if we feel all wrong, Jesus makes it all right. His grace pardons our sin. Grace also has a power to it. When we know that we don't have to strive to be something in God, when we know we don't have to earn his favor or his grace, we can relax into a relationship with him. And somehow grace starts to work, where he starts to change us on the inside. And the power of grace is where we want to change and we want to be more like Jesus. We are so grateful to him. We worship him, we honor him, and we want to be more like him. Grace gives us pardon. Grace brings with it power. And ultimately, grace brings us a promise. A promise to say that he will bring us through and that there will be a better day. Ultimately, there's a better day in heaven, but here, even on earth, that we can lean into his grace. When everything is going fantastic, it's the grace of God. When things aren't going so well, lean into the grace of God.
If you enjoyed this video today, why don't you click subscribe and click on that notification bell to get a notification the next time we upload a video. And if you're new or you've been coming to the C3 Church for a little while now, why don't you find out what your next step might be in the journey of faith? Click on the next step link in the description below to find out what your next step in your journey might be.